Hello, everyone, and welcome to 7 Continents, One Story.
Hi there. So glad you're joining us today.
Hey everyone, great to have you here.
I'm Niels, professor of history from Sweden.
I'm Celine, joining you from Edinburgh, Scotland.
And I'm Ethan, calling in from Malta.
Together, we explore incredible stories from history across all 7 continents.
Every episode brings you a new journey through time.
From ancient civilizations to modern moments that changed everything.
So let's begin.
Right. I've got something special in the studio today. Something that has 2 very different stories to tell depending on who's looking at it. Now you've got my attention. What is it? Well, I came across this, the replica anyway, when I was researching Roman history. It's massive, stone, carved with incredible detail, and it depicts something that changed the course of history.
Is this going to be one of those episodes where everything falls apart? Because those are my favorites.
Actually, Nils, this is the episode about everything falling apart, but not in the way most people think. So the first clue. This stone carving shows a moment of triumph. Soldiers carrying spoils of war, bold treasures. But here's what's fascinating. They're carrying something very specific. A menorah, a candelabrum. Not just any candelabrum, the most sacred menorah in the ancient world. A menorah? That's Jewish, isn't it?
Exactly right. So this is a Roman monument celebrating the seizure of Jewish sacred objects, which tells us something enormous happened, something worth commemorating in stone for all eternity.
So Romans won something important, and they took something really valuable from Jewish people?
You're tracking the right thread, Niels. Now let Niels take you there.
The year is 70 CE, specifically the 9th day of Tisha B'Av in the Hebrew calendar. You're standing in Jerusalem, and you're standing in the worst moment of your people's history. Smoke rises from the Temple Mount, not the gentle smoke of incense and sacrificial offerings that has risen from this place for nearly 5 centuries. This is the smoke of destruction, the smoke of burning wood and flesh and stone. The walls are breached, the gates are shattered. Roman legions, thousands of them, are moving through the streets like a tide that cannot be stopped. And in the temple itself, the holiest space in all of Judaism, Roman soldiers are carrying out treasures that will never return to the city again. This is the destruction of Jerusalem, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same again.
That's almost too much to visualize.
Wait, so the menorah Ethan showed us, it was taken from the temple during this destruction? Yes, Ethan, but we'll come back to that. First, you need to understand what led 400,000 soldiers to surround one city. You need to understand the breaking point. So we need to step back about 66 years. Rome has just conquered Judea directly, not as a kingdom with a friendly king in charge. No, Rome sends administrators, procurators. They're there to extract wealth and maintain order.
Like how Romans administered Britain? Or?
Exactly like that. Judea is now just another Roman province. But here's the complication. Unlike most places Rome conquers, Judea has something Rome doesn't really understand or respect.
What's that?
Religion. Real religion. Not the kind where you worship the emperor, the kind where the people believe they have a covenant with God that predates Rome by over 1,000 years. They won't accept Roman gods. They won't tolerate idols in their sacred spaces.
And Rome tried to change that?
Rome tried, repeatedly, and each time it made things worse. Imagine living in Jerusalem in the 60s CE. Your ancestors have controlled the city for centuries. Well, with some interruptions, but it's always been your city. Then Rome arrives with its taxes, its corruption, its indifference to what you hold sacred. By the time we reach 66 CE, the procurators have become almost comically incompetent and brutal. There's one named Gestius Florus, and this man crosses a line that nobody can come back from.
What did he do?
He raids the temple treasury. He walks into the holiest place in all of Judaism and steals money, millions in today's currency. And when the people of Jerusalem protest, when they mock him in the streets, he sends soldiers into the city. His soldiers massacre hundreds of Jewish civilians.
Just like that? Because they mocked him?
Just like that. And that's when everything changes, because at a certain point, People stop accepting. They start fighting back. When the call goes out in 66 CE for defenders of Jerusalem, a man named John of Giscala answers it. He's from a small town in Galilee. He's educated. He speaks multiple languages, and he's going to become one of the most skilled military tacticians in the resistance.
John of Giscala. Okay.
At this point, Rome sends in its best general, Vespasian, with his son Titus, who will become emperor. 4 full legions. That's not a police action. That's an invasion to crush a rebellion.
So this wasn't a quick thing?
Celine, the Romans spend 3 years fighting their way through Galilee and Judea. 3 years. By the time they reach Jerusalem in April of 70 CE, the Jewish defenders have lost almost everything except the capital city itself. Remember that stone monument I mentioned? Let me give you the second clue about it. The carving shows a very specific moment. Roman soldiers are carrying the temple treasures in a victory procession. This actually happened. It's not artistic imagination. This procession was real. It took place in Rome itself. The Roman emperor wanted to commemorate his victory so completely that he commissioned a monument to celebrate it.
So this Arch of Titus thing, it still exists?
It still exists in Rome. It's been standing for nearly 2,000 years. In Jewish tradition, they would never walk through it, not even in modern times, because passing under it means accepting the reality of what it commemorates.
So this thing is still a symbol of the destruction?
Of the destruction. Of the moment everything changed. Of the end of one world and the beginning of another.
So walk us through what actually happened. When did the siege start?
The siege began on the 14th of April, 70 CE. Passover was about to start. The city was absolutely packed with pilgrims. The population swelled from maybe 70,000 to nearly 500,000 people.
500,000 in one city?
All packed inside the walls, no way out. The Romans have surrounded the city completely. 4 massive legions, tens of thousands of soldiers, catapults, siege engines, towers.
So they're tracked.
Completely trapped. And here's the tragedy. The defenders don't work together. They're split into different factions. The zealots control the temple. John of Giscala, remember him? He controls another section. There's a third group led by Simon Bar-Giora. They spend as much energy fighting each other as fighting Rome.
Really? They fight among themselves while Rome is at the gates?
Sometimes the most tragic moments are when the enemy is external, but the people can't unite against it. That's what's happening in Jerusalem. So the siege lasts approximately 5 months. Not days, not weeks. 5 months. And it follows a predictable pattern. Rome has a strategy, and it's systematic. It's terrifying in its logic. The Romans, they're not interested in negotiation. They're not interested in accepting surrender. They want to send a message. They want to crush rebellion so completely that no other province ever thinks about resisting again.
So what's the strategy?
First, they cut off the supply lines. People inside Jerusalem are completely isolated. No food can come in. No water can be brought from outside the walls. Then, and here's the crucial part, they begin attacking the walls systematically. Jerusalem has 3 defensive walls. This was intentional design. If the attackers break through the first wall, the defenders fall back to the second. If they break the second, they fall back to the third. Each wall is progressively stronger.
So they had layers of defense?
Exactly right. It's a smart military design. The problem is, Rome has the most advanced military technology in the ancient world, and time is on their side. The first wall holds for 4 days. 4 days. Then the Romans break through using massive siege towers and battering rams. The defenders are pushed back to the second wall.
This must be absolutely devastating for the people inside.
Celine, this is the moment when supplies start to run desperately short. Inside the city, you have hundreds of thousands of people. Pilgrims who came for Passover and never expected to be trapped. Families, children, elderly people. Josephus, a Jewish historian who was actually inside the city during the siege, he tells us that people began dying of starvation, not killed in battle. Starvation. Families eating bark from trees, fighting over scraps of food.
How long does this go on?
For 5 months, Ethan, 5 months. Now, during this period, we see different leaders responding in different ways. Some want to negotiate, some want to keep fighting, some are trying to maintain some kind of order. John of Giscala, remember him? He becomes absolutely crucial. He's defending the northern part of the city. He's coordinating defense efforts. He's trying to find ways to hold the walls when food is running out and hope is fading.
What makes him different from the other leaders?
Intelligence, resilience. Tactical thinking. Even when it's becoming obvious they can't win militarily, he's finding ways to use the terrain, the walls, the position to make Rome pay for every inch they take.
So he's fighting for pride, for resistance?
He's fighting because some people believe that even when the odds are impossible, you don't surrender everything. You make them work for it. You make them remember the cost. The second wall holds longer than the first, maybe 15 days. But Rome has learned from the first breach. They apply more force, more coordination, more siege equipment. When the second wall finally breaks, the defenders are pushed back into the Temple Mount itself. And now we're approaching the most sacred space in all of Judaism. The temple, the place where God dwells, according to Jewish belief.
So now it's not just about military defense, it's about the sacred.
It's the ultimate point of conflict, because Rome doesn't care about the sacred. To Rome, the temple is just a fortified position that needs to be captured. By this point, the starvation inside the city has become catastrophic. Josephus describes people eating leather, papyrus, anything that might provide calories. Bodies are stacked in the streets because there's no one left with strength to bury them properly.
This is the worst part, isn't it?
One of the worst parts, because it's not dramatic military failure, it's slow, grinding, terrible human suffering. People you love dying because there's no food.
And the defenders? What do they do? Do they surrender?
Many try to surrender or escape. Some succeed. They sneak out at night and try to reach Roman lines. But the Romans have a response to that, too. They crucify deserters, hundreds of them. They crucify them inside of the walls so the people inside can see what happens if you try to leave.
They crucify them as a message?
Rome doesn't do things halfway. They're making it clear. Your only choices are fight or die. There's no escape. There's no surrender with dignity. And here's where we reach a crucial moment, a moment that changed everything. By early September, so we're about 5 months into the siege, the defenders know they've lost. The Romans control all 3 walls. They're at the gates of the temple itself. Food is gone. Hope is nearly gone. The defenders face a choice, actually a few choices.
Okay, so here's the moment. You're one of the defenders. You're looking at Roman legions. You're starving. Your city is in ruins. What do you do?
Do you fight to the last person? Do you try to surrender?
The choice is actually more complex. Some people, the zealots who control the temple, they say we should fight. They believe God will intervene. They believe the Romans will be destroyed miraculously.
Do they actually believe that?
Some do. Some are using it as rhetoric to keep people fighting. It's complicated, but the effect is the same. They're saying, do not surrender. Do not abandon the temple. Fight until the last breath.
What about surrender?
If you surrender, Rome will slaughter many of you. But some might live. You might be enslaved. Your city will be destroyed. The temple will be demolished. Everything your ancestors built will be gone.
So you choose between certain death, fighting, or possible survival and slavery?
Exactly. And if you fight, you're fighting not just with swords. You're fighting to protect something sacred, to protect the identity of your people.
I think I'd want to fight, because surrendering means losing everything that makes you who you are.
But Ethan, if everyone fights, everyone dies. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but they all die. And what changes?
This is the genius and tragedy of the moment. Both options are devastating. Fighting means death. Surrendering means the end of Jewish independence and the destruction of the temple. Either way, everything changes.
So what actually happened? What did they choose?
They chose to fight. Not all of them. Some did flee, some did surrender. But the leadership, the ones controlling the temple, they chose to fight. And that decision made what comes next. Absolutely inevitable and absolutely catastrophic. September 1st, the Romans begin the final assault on the Temple Mount. The defenders have built fortifications using the temple itself as a stronghold. The Romans bring siege towers, battering rams. They're not trying to preserve the temple. They're trying to break through and capture the defenders.
So they're destroying it as they go?
The temple is 5 centuries old. It's the most magnificent building in the ancient Mediterranean. Herod the Great spent a fortune renovating it. It has gold overlay, precious stones. The walls are enormous, and the Romans are systematically destroying it. And through all of this, John of Giscala, remember him from earlier? He's still fighting. He's trying to organize the defense. He's trying to inspire people to resist even when resistance seems completely futile.
You keep coming back to him. Is he important?
You're paying attention, Ethan. Yes. John of Giscala becomes important in ways that history has largely forgotten. He manages to escape the temple compound before it's completely overrun. He hides in the underground catacombs beneath the city. For days, he's hiding while the Romans systematically destroy the temple above him.
Does he eventually surrender?
He's captured. He's one of the last defenders. When the Romans finally drag him out, they're going to execute him. That's what happens to rebellion leaders. But something happens that saves his life. Something unexpected.
What?
Titus, the Roman commander, the son of the emperor, Titus recognizes something in John, sees him as someone of worth. Not because of mercy exactly, but because Titus respects courage, respects this man who fought beyond what any reasonable person would have fought. Titus spares John's life and allows him to live. John eventually settles in Rome. He becomes a teacher. He brings the story of the destruction to people who otherwise would never have known what happened.
So John of Giscala, he's the voice of what happened?
He's one of the voices. He survives to tell the story. Most people don't. Most people who fought in Jerusalem that month die. But John lives. John remembers. John of Giscala, remember his name. Remember that he was there. Remember that he fought with intelligence and courage against impossible odds. September 5 or 6. The exact date is disputed, but there's no dispute about what happens. The Romans set the temple on fire. Some sources say it's intentional. Some say it's accidental. The flames spread from surrounding buildings. It doesn't matter. The result is the same. The temple burns, and as it burns, the defenders who haven't been killed yet are trapped. Some jump to their deaths rather than surrender. Some are burned alive. Some are killed by Roman soldiers.
And the sacred objects? The religious treasures?
Some are destroyed in the fire. Some are captured by the Romans. The Menorah, the one from our artifact, it's taken intact. Titus orders his soldiers to preserve it. It becomes a trophy, a symbol of Roman victory.
That's the thing on the arch, the thing you showed us at the beginning.
That's it, the most sacred object in Judaism, captured and displayed as a trophy of war. And that image of Roman soldiers carrying the menorah, it becomes a permanent record of the destruction. You know, speaking of long-term strategy, this actually reminds me why we're partnered with Cyprus Real Returns.
Right, because smart investing has always been about finding stable, secure opportunities.
Exactly. Cyprus Real Returns offers secure real estate investments with guaranteed 6 to 12% returns, fully backed by the Cyprus Land Registry. Professional management makes it completely hands-off.
And with Cyprus tourism booming, over 4 million visitors annually, those returns can fund your own historical adventures. Visit cyprusrealreturns.com.
By early September, it's over. Not just the siege. It's over as a Jewish nation, as a temple-based religious system, as an independent people in their homeland. Roman soldiers move through the city systematically. They're looking for survivors, for rebels, for anything of value. The death toll is catastrophic. Josephus claims over 1 million Jews died during the entire war. Modern scholars think it's probably lower, maybe 100,000 to 200,000. But even the lower estimates are devastating.
That's an enormous number of people.
The city itself is systematically demolished, stone by stone, wall by wall. Titus orders the destruction so complete that it's meant to send a message. Jerusalem will never be a center of rebellion again.
And the temple, what's left of it?
Nothing. Rubble, ash, the foundation stones, the memory of what was there, but nothing that functions, nothing that can be used for worship. The Jewish religious system that had survived for nearly 5 centuries is gone. When you destroy a temple, you don't just destroy a building, you destroy a way of being human. For 5 centuries, Jewish identity has been centered on the temple, on pilgrimage, on sacrificial worship, on coming together 3 times a year to worship in the holiest space on earth. All of that is gone, instantly. Gone.
So what happens to Judaism? Does it just end?
This is where the story becomes even more interesting, Celine, because Judaism doesn't end. Somehow, miraculously, Judaism transforms. Before 70 CE, Judaism is temple-based. You go to the temple to worship. You bring offerings. You speak to God through sacrifice. After 70 CE, Judaism becomes something completely different. It becomes textual. It becomes about studying Torah. about prayer instead of sacrifice, about community gatherings instead of temple pilgrimage.
So, they just completely changed their religion?
Not overnight. It took years, decades. But gradually, Jewish leaders, rabbis, they realized something. They realized that without the temple, Judaism needs a new center. And they found it. They found it in the law, in the texts, in the Torah and the Talmud, in the words that no Roman army could destroy, no fire could burn, no siege could starve.
So the destruction, as terrible as it was, it created something new?
It created rabbinic Judaism, the form of Judaism that has survived until today, the form that spread throughout the Mediterranean and beyond as Jews scattered from Jerusalem to Egypt to Rome to the entire diaspora. Without the destruction of the temple, Judaism would have likely died with Jerusalem. Instead, it transformed into something more resilient, more portable, more spiritual.
So the worst moment became the moment that saved the religion?
In a strange, tragic way, yes. The survivors of the siege, those who escape death and slavery, they scatter. Some go to Egypt, some to Rome, some to the edges of the Mediterranean. Over the following decades, they're joined by voluntary emigrants, by people who leave Judea because the land is devastated. This becomes the Jewish diaspora, the scattering of Jews throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. It's not what they wanted, it's the result of catastrophe. But it's what saved Judaism.
Because if all the Jews had stayed in Jerusalem, they would have all been wiped out.
Exactly. The destruction scattered them, and in being scattered, they survived, and they brought their religion with them. They brought their stories, they brought their memory of what happened.
So when Neil said, everyone remembers this every year?
Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Avi. It's the day in the Hebrew calendar when the temple fell, and for nearly 2,000 years, Jewish people have commemorated that day. They fast. They read poetry about the destruction. They remember. They remember what was lost. And they remember that they survived. So remember that stone monument I told you about at the beginning? The one with Roman soldiers carrying the menorah?
The Arch of Titus.
The Arch of Titus. It still stands in Rome, nearly 2,000 years later. And there's a remarkable thing about it. The Romans built it to celebrate their victory, to show the world that Rome had crushed the rebellion, that Jerusalem was defeated, that the temple treasures were Roman property. But something extraordinary happened. That monument, that triumphant arch, it became something else. It became a testimony, a witness, a place where the story of the destruction is literally carved in stone. Jewish people throughout history have refused to walk under the Arch of Titus. Even in modern times, when the arch is just a historical monument in the heart of Rome, Jewish visitors won't walk under it, because to walk under it is to accept symbolically the Roman victory.
So they're still resisting even after 2,000 years?
In their own way, yes. They're saying, we remember what happened. We honor those who died. We won't pretend that this victory is acceptable.
That's incredibly powerful, actually.
This is what makes history so complex, so human. The Romans built a monument to celebrate their power, and it became a monument to Jewish resilience, to memory, to the refusal to forget. Now, something remarkable happens because of the destruction of Jerusalem. Christianity changes.
Christianity was Jewish at this point, wasn't it?
Yes. In the decades after Jesus' death, around 30 CE, the Jesus movement was completely Jewish. Jesus was Jewish. His followers were Jewish. They celebrated Jewish festivals. They went to the temple. They were part of the Jewish community. But when the temple was destroyed in 70 CE, something happened. The Jewish Christian movement, the followers of Jesus who were still practicing Judaism, they scattered. They lost their center. They lost the temple.
So what happened to them?
Gradually, they became separated from mainstream Judaism. The rabbis, who were rebuilding Judaism without the temple, they began to see Christians as part of their problem, as a sect that had broken away. And Christians, on the other hand, began to develop their own identity separate from Judaism, more Hellenized, more focused on Jesus as the central figure rather than on Jewish law.
So the destruction of the temple, it forced Christianity to become something different?
In a fundamental way, yes. Without the temple's destruction, Jesus' movement would likely have remained a Jewish sect. Instead, it became a separate religion. It became Christianity.
So one historical event shaped both Judaism and Christianity?
One moment, one city, one moment of destruction fundamentally altered the course of both religions.
I keep thinking about what we talked about.
about the defenders choosing to fight even though they would lose.
Yes.
Was it the right choice? I'm genuinely asking. They fought. They all died. The city was destroyed anyway.
That's perhaps the most important question about this entire event, Celine, because you're right. From a purely practical perspective, fighting was a disaster. It led to more suffering, more death, more complete destruction. But there's another way to look at it. If they had surrendered immediately, if they had not resisted at all, what message would that send? That Rome can do anything it wants without consequence? That you should accept your subjugation without resistance?
So even losing the fight, it matters?
There's something in the human spirit that says some things are worth fighting for, even when you know you'll lose, even when the odds are impossible. That's not weakness. That's not foolishness. That's a kind of courage. John of Giscala fought. He probably knew he couldn't win, but he fought anyway. He fought with intelligence and determination, and when he was captured by someone, Titus, who respected what he had done.
So, in a way, the fight itself was its own kind of victory?
In a way, yes. Not militarily, but morally, spiritually, in terms of what it said about the people of Jerusalem. They didn't surrender without a struggle. They didn't accept Roman authority without a fight. If we step back from the particular story, what do we learn about the empire, about power, about the nature of conquest?
What do you think?
The Romans believed that crushing rebellion completely was the best way to prevent future rebellions. So they destroyed Jerusalem, they destroyed the temple, they scattered the population. They demonstrated power so overwhelming that no one would dare resist again. And by some measures, it worked. There were no major Jewish rebellions against Rome after 70 CE. Rome had won completely.
But you said Judaism survived. It transformed. It spread. In the long view, did Rome really win?
This is the paradox of the destruction of Jerusalem. Rome won the military victory. Completely. Totally. But they lost the civilizational victory. Because the thing they destroyed, Jewish identity, Jewish faith, it survived. It transformed. It spread in ways that Rome never anticipated. 2,000 years later, the Arch of Titus still stands. But the temple has been rebuilt in the hearts and minds of Jewish people everywhere. Rome's victory became a Pyrrhic victory. It won the battle, but lost something more important.
So history isn't always won by the people with the biggest armies?
Not in the deepest sense. No, Ethan. Military victory is temporary, but cultural resilience, the refusal to accept that your identity can be erased, that endures.
I keep thinking about the people inside the city, the ones we haven't talked about, the families, the ones who weren't leaders or fighters.
Yes, that's the hardest part to imagine. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary people, not soldiers, just people, living their lives in Jerusalem, some expecting to return to their homes after Passover, some born in the city and never expecting it could fall. And they experienced something that only a few populations in history have experienced, the complete destruction of their homeland, the eradication of their religious system, the scattering of their people.
And we don't know their names.
We don't. History records the leaders, John of Giscala, the high priests, Titus, Vespasian. But the people, the ordinary people who died in the siege or fled into diaspora, we don't know their individual names. We know their numbers. We know they suffered. We know they survived or didn't. But we don't know them as individuals.
That's sad.
It is. And that's part of why this event is remembered annually. The names are forgotten, but the memory is kept alive. The loss is remembered. The suffering is acknowledged. Tisha B'Av is about keeping those unnamed people alive in memory.
In Japan, do they have something similar? A day to remember when a city was destroyed or something important was lost?
What are you thinking?
Because I think in Japanese history, there are moments like that. Times when entire cities were destroyed, maybe by war, maybe by natural disaster. And I think they remember those moments too.
That's a really interesting connection, Ethan.
You're touching on something universal. Across cultures, across continents, human beings mark moments of collective loss. We remember together. We acknowledge that something precious was destroyed, and we honor what was lost and who was lost. This isn't unique to Jews. This isn't unique to Jerusalem. This is human. This is how we process trauma, how we maintain meaning in the face of destruction. So let's recap what we've discussed today. We started with a stone monument, the Arch of Titus, that seems to celebrate Roman victory. We trace the causes, years of corruption and cultural insensitivity by Roman procurators. We watch the Roman army methodically breach 3 walls, driven by hunger and disease from within, by the inevitability of Roman military power from without.
We saw different leaders trying to respond, some wanting to fight, some wanting to surrender, and people like John of Giscala trying to maintain some kind of meaningful resistance.
And we saw how even when the temple was destroyed, even when Jerusalem was destroyed, the people survived. The religion survived. It changed, but it survived.
Exactly. The destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE is a moment when empires collide with faith, where military power confronts spiritual resilience, and where the seemingly absolute victory of Rome becomes, over time, something more complex. Before we close, I want to come back to someone we talked about throughout this episode, someone whose name was nearly erased by history, John of Giscala, a man from a small town in Galilee. He was educated, intelligent, and skilled. When Rome came to crush the rebellion, John fought, not because he thought he could win, but because some things are worth fighting for. John fought through 3 walls falling. He fought while the city starved. He fought when everyone could see that Rome was going to win. He fought until he was captured. But when Titus captured him, something unexpected happened. Titus respected him. Titus saw in John a man of worth, a man of courage, and Titus let him live. John survived. He carried the story of the destruction. He lived to tell what happened. He lived to bridge the old world and the new world that Judaism had to become. Remember the name, John of Giscala. One man who fought with intelligence and courage against impossible odds. One man whose name deserves to be remembered alongside the names of emperors and generals.
Because without people like John, we wouldn't have the story at all.
Because without people like John, the story would have died in the flames of the temple. But it didn't. It survived. It's been told for 2,000 years, and we're still telling it.
And we should keep telling it.
Yes, Ethan, we should. So why does this matter today? Why, in the 21st century, should anyone care about something that happened nearly 2,000 years ago? Well, first, because the legacy lives on. If you're Jewish, the destruction of the temple fundamentally shapes your religious and cultural identity. Tisha B'Av is still observed, the fast is still kept, the memory is still active. If you're Christian, the destruction of the temple was the moment your religion became truly separate from Judaism. The moment Christianity began its path to becoming a world religion.
But it's not just about religion, is it? It's about how civilizations handle conquest, how empires exercise power.
Exactly. The destruction of Jerusalem was Rome saying, this is what happens when you resist. This is what absolute power looks like. You will be destroyed, your religion will be erased, your identity will be scattered. And yet, it didn't work. Not completely. The identity survived, the religion survived, the people scattered but maintained their unity.
So there's hope even when it seems like everything is lost?
There is, Ethan. That's what the story of Jerusalem teaches us. Even in the face of complete destruction, even when empires march against you with overwhelming force, there are things that can survive: beliefs, values, identity, the refusal to accept that your story is over. So we come back to where we started, the Arch of Titus, a monument to Roman victory, a depiction of Roman soldiers carrying away the most sacred object in Judaism. And yet, that monument tells a different story than Rome intended. It tells the story of what Rome had to destroy, the power of what Rome had to overcome, the value of what Rome had conquered. The menorah on that arch, that's not just a symbol of Roman victory, it's a symbol of everything that was precious about Jewish civilization. It's a symbol of loss. And loss, when remembered, becomes a way of keeping something alive.
So the conqueror's monument becomes the memory of the conquered.
Yes, in a way, Rome built its own testimony against itself. By depicting the temple treasures so carefully, so realistically, Rome preserved the memory of what it had destroyed. 2,000 years later, people looking at that arch don't think about Roman power. They think about Jewish resilience. They think about what was lost. They think about the story we've told today. History is sometimes about empire and power, but it's also about resilience. It's about the things that survive when everything else is destroyed. The temple is gone. Jerusalem was rebuilt, but never as it was before. The Jewish nation, as it existed before 70 CE, never returned. The world changed, but the people endured. The faith endured. The memory endured. And nearly 2,000 years later, we're still telling the story. We're still remembering. We're still learning lessons about power, about resistance, about what it means to be human in the face of overwhelming destruction.
That's what history is, really. It's the stories we keep telling about the people who came before, about what mattered to them, about what we can learn.
And some stories like this one, they just don't stop mattering.
No, they don't. The destruction of Jerusalem is one of those stories, one of the big ones, the ones that echo across centuries and continents. We've journeyed through nearly 2,000 years today. We've stood at the walls of Jerusalem. We've felt the heat of burning stone. We've witnessed the moment when empire crushed a nation. We've seen how faith and identity survive even that devastation. And we've remembered the names we could: John of Giscala, Titus, the builders who made the temple so magnificent, and the nameless thousands who lived through the destruction and carried the story forward. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history.
This one really put things in perspective.
Until our next journey through time, keep history alive.